Nu în girato funzionava nell'architettura siamo programmi in Future Architecture Platform, organizzando conferenze che mi realized just persona som initiativa architektoniske problem drøsjene. Pre Kosovo så vi kan reisen edhe Erbinë. Kështu që tjerë që kanë aftu, unë kanë prezentu, kanë aftu edhe kemi po në një mënyrë se çka mendojnë ata është problematika në cilën duhet me trajtu arkitektët e në cilë është problematika e Evropë. Pa kemi të regu ma shumë për Future Architecture Platform, se kanë së detyrë, është organizata ma e madhe pan-europiane e arkitekturës, kanë 15 organizata o festivalet të arkitekturës në Evropës, të vjo përfshi Triennalen e Lisbonës, festivalin në Magës të arkitekturës, Maxi Muzeum, Marat Ljubljanës e kështu të radhë, janë edhe na pjesë bashkë me Tiranë, Zagrebin e tjerë. Çdo vjet platforma ka thirrje për arkitektat, arspedisa kemi po, janë më shumë, faqet kafe nuk kena, po në Facebook s'po kena më me njëftu studentat arkitekturës dhe arkitektat e rime piku. Që isha lutën për cilë, kanë pas edhe si vjetë shumë që kanë gjaj shumë, këshëm pas qef që me pas shumë a shumë aplikime në Kosovës, dhe në fakt që ka ndohë mësë anë është qëftohën për këtë 15 festivalit, në numër për zgjellë me prezentu atë konceptin e juj në bjë arkitekturë. Mos të zgjas ma shumë, të ndër part janë Nela dhe Vera, cilë ka në full për punimin e të në diplomës, e cilë edhe ka qenë në shpërblymë, ata janë të muajnë që ta është të rrimë bazun në këtë temin e diplomës të në, më thorë është mapimi alternativ i qytetit, jo është i kolegjia, jo ajo built environment, po në që shmune edhe i ndryshëm me bo mapimi. Kështë që i kështë aftu si ligjurës të po. Please.
So thank you everybody. I didn't understand the word, but I think I understand Future Architecture Platform and Skopje and Nela and Vera. That's us. We are a very young office of the two of us and our partner Markus, who's in Vienna right now, and we are specialized on urban issues and urban design. So today we would like to introduce you to our Skopje work. We did in 2014, and it was also our diploma thesis. Yeah, and we will just start right off. So, what would you expect of a city that has been victim of a tremendous earthquake during the 1960s? A Japanese metabolist architect has been held accountable for the city's reconstruction, and in recent times has been mainly in the media for a project called Skopje 2014. We were more than curious and decided to get answers to our questions. Our work started off with a subjective foray throughout the city. It dealt with our very first impressions and first journey to Skopje in 2012, about us dealing with quite challenging ideological standing points regarding the multi-ethnic demographic structure, especially when taking a closer look at the project Skopje 2014, which is a so-called city development plan executed by the city government. We guess you know it by now. But not only causes the neoclassical and Baroque style of the new buildings the main problem, the most striking aspect about it is that the southern part of the city, the more pretentious facades are looking towards the southern part of the city, whereas they are building barriers towards the northern part of the city, which is also the ancient city part. And what's really bad about all this is that the built environment of Skopje 2014 is reinforcing ethnical and social segregation, even more as the pretentious facades are looking towards the Macedonian majority, whereas the harsh backside of the buildings are facing north, towards the Albanian population and the Roma. So we think that it is dangerous to interpret Skopje 2014 as just a nostalgic attempt of nation branding, which is just a normal reaction on the earthquake in 1963, because it severely stokes conflicts within this sensitive society and empowers the introduction of nationalist propaganda. So this extremely difficult situation moved us very much and still does so, but we decided not to give up on the city and decided not to leave out the disturbing aspects of the Macedonian Disneyland and turn our back and turn it to the authentic Skopje, which tells a lot of different stories. We turned our back towards what is obvious and dived in, and we would not regret doing so. So first, we saved our impressions and adventures in photographs and short stories and formed a city portrait, which should be continued one day, we hope. This is just some impressions that we captured. We will go through quite briefly because it's too long to show you all in detail. We also captured it on Google Maps because we thought it's also important to see something else than Skopje 2014. From an everyday, regular point of view, the extremely high fragmented city structure is almost impossible to understand. So we put all of our experience and knowledges about the city in a mind map, which encouraged us to make a switch in perspective and make use of classical urbanist tools in order to enhance the readability of this super heterogenic city structure.
This part is about the transformation of the city, or as we call it, the anatomy of the city structure. It's a morphological analysis to understand how this fragmented city could actually develop that way. What is relevant for today's structure starts at about 1830. To that time, Skopje was an Ottoman town, an organically grown agglomeration north of the river Vardar. With the erection of the first rail tracks south of the river, which was mainly out of topographical reasons, the city started to build settlements south of the river. The railway station and the prolongation of the rail tracks towards the northeast enabled a constant radial growth of the southern part, where the rail track marked the limits. Following the Balkan Wars from 1912 till 1914, an ideological turn of society and thus the transformation from the Ottoman town to the European city took place. And it was mainly influenced by Western Europe architects and urbanists, that the urbanists of Skopje started developing master plans for the transformation of the town to the European city. The main plan is from 1940, and there is a second one in 1929. And the slightly absurd fact about that is that it's mainly those plans that are being the ideal for today's development, not only in an urbanistic way, but also in a formal one. Here you see from the plan of 1948 that this radical development was taking place only on the southern part of the city. The northern part kept mainly the way it was. Those significant linear concepts, those linear city concepts from the mid-40s influenced Czech architect Jurek Kukaš for maybe the most radical plan of Skopje. He proposed a division of functions which was quite common at that time. Especially, he proposed the industrial area in the eastern part of the city, residential area in the western part, and the commercial area in the city center. The reorganization of the traffic situation of the mid-50s caused the first decay of the city center, and that was of course accelerated by the flooding in 1962 and the severe earthquake in 1963, as you heard before. At that time, Skopje became the city of solidarity, which was very unlikely in times of the Cold War. And due to international donations, the so-called hut camps were erected, mainly outside the destroyed city structure. These are those hut camps. The United Nations arranged an international competition call for the reconstruction plan of the inner city, and the two essential requirements of the competition were a strong interaction between the northern and the southern part of the river. Kenzo Tanger's team won the competition. Its main design goals were the city gate and the city wall, as well as the historic axis. We wanted to keep it and to reinforce it, and as well as a new axis, the east-west axis, and the two cross each other at the Marshal Tito Square, that today is Plaza Macedonia, which is still the main square in Skopje. Kenzo Tanger won the competition with 51% approval, mainly because of its futuristic approach. And the second prize had a 49% approval, and it was a Croatian team called Miščević and Tencel. And they got the second prize mostly because of the feasibility. So because of those very close results of the competition, both teams are being sworn into finding a common language and work together, which might have become very complicated and finally led to a strong reduction of the project's main principles. So the doubled square, which was the north and south of the River Vader, it was never built, and therefore the city wall never got its finished solution. And the city gate, which would have been a very important part of it, was only built in the form of the railway station, which is still the main railway station in Skopje. During the 1980s, the plan gradually lost its legitimation, and first nationalist influences began to manifest in the city structure. And it was especially this plan of 1997 that incorporated first reconstructions, as well as postmodernist reinterpretations, and that already paved the way for Skopje 2014. So none of those shown master plans had been implemented to a significant holistic level, which leads to today's existing situation, a highly fragmented urban patchwork. In order to improve the readability of this heterogenic structure, we decided to make a typological catalog So we could categorize the single components and set them in relation to each other.
So we decided to develop urban typologies. First of all, we focused on those which are already existing and very obvious and probably exist in every city. There are organic systems like the Stara Čaršija, the Ottoman Old Town north of the River Vaga. Then there's also endangered structures. We mean small remains of villages which are severely pressured by large-scale structures and are vanishing. Then we have the hut camps, which we mentioned before, which are also being reused and established in the city structure today, as well as already established settlements throughout the city. We have the typical 50s housing rows. Remember Ljudikovich's proposal? It's from that time, where the transition from radial to linear city took place. From radial to linear, I'm sorry. And then there's also a small remain of city blocks, mainly located in the city center. And then residential parks from the 70s and 80s. And large-scale structures like here, there's a special typology in Skopje, which is called Aerodrome, and is really a huge housing complex, also from the 70s, 80s. And further, we tried to find special typologies for Skopje, like here, for example, the solitaires. We call them solitaires because solitaires don't fit in terms of scale, nor do they functionally try to fit into the urban context, or they build even barriers. The next special typology is the fractions. You see, Skopje has a lot of fractions in the city structure. There's functional fractions, then linear connective fractions. We mean these are like roads, the railway, and the river, which have a connecting aspect but still divide. Oh, sorry. And then we have discontinuity fractions, for example, streets leading nowhere, but yeah, and harsh ending structures in general. Monofunctional islands or fractions, which are non-accessible and widely autonomous areas. And we have social fractions in terms of segregation. And furthermore, we discovered one very, very special typology. It's called the backbones. And the backbones, we discovered that the addition of the residential parks, especially these in the western part, can be described as backbones, not only in a structural but also in a spatial way, defining public, semi-public and private spaces, but also function on a infrastructural supply level, like public transportation, for example, and in terms of traffic. We discovered further that these fractions and solitaires, so the first two special typologies, are more likely to occur in areas without backbones. And this is also the conclusion we are taking, and we are taking it further, and we developed a strategy how to deal with the city in the future. So, especially in the north, in the east, and the northeast, you can clearly see that there are hardly any backbone structures to be found, which leads to a lack of directions and empowers excessive and uncontrolled growth and the formation of urban islands. The image of the city is very inconsistent. It's almost impossible to access these areas as a pedestrian. So we would most likely introduce the figure of the backbone in order to set an impulse for a reorganization process. So existing structures as the rail track and the river should step by step be transformed from separating to connecting potentials and enable this resettlement of new qualities and a natural formation of backbones in the northeastern part of the city. This graphic shows the situation of the existing public transport and traffic network overlaid. Even here, it is proven once more that the western part is much further developed and better functioning than the eastern part of the city, and encourages us in our proposal to introduce the existing rail track and use it as a city trail and integrate it into a public transport system. The frequency of the railway should be drastically risen. Currently there are 6 formal in black and 4 informal stops, which are grey. In order to enhance the accessibility, we propose to formalize the informal railway station and as well as implementing new stops. Activating the railway system and reintroducing it as the new city rail should enable positive synergies for neglected regions throughout the city. What is most important to us on the first hand is to regain equality of both riverbanks. The river meadows should be gradually reevaluated and be implemented in the corresponding stage of planning. It is important to define limitations for the building development in order to preserve a recreational landscape area on both sides of the river. So first, the existing rail track, which leads to the airport but is not in use yet, should be activated. A new station at the airport should be implemented, provide an image change and a new purpose for the city gate. As a next step, we propose to formalize existing and add new stops along to the northeastern track of the city trail. Further, the city rail should be prolonged and also towards the south and north. And then we would like also to connect the west in the 5th step. We will not, due to lack of time, we will not show you your implementation strategies right now. We did a lot of them, but we will show you how we applied it in an urban design study.
So this aerial image shows the clasp, which we are going to talk about right now. It is defined through the river Vardar, not important, through the river and Boulevard Alexander Makedonsky, and the whole area is divided by the rail track. Here you see it in the plan. This is the Boulevard Alexander Makedonsky, and this is the river. This is the rail track. Okay. The accessibility for pedestrians is almost impossible, and it's dominated by huge breaks within the urban structure. This whole area, it's you can find more or less intact industrial sites. I remember this radical plan by Judith Kubesh with the industrial area in the east. So this is the part, actually. So here you can find hardly any functions of public interest, and especially not along the main roads. So we propose to gradually deindustrialize and reconnect the existing structures and also implement them into our proposals, as some of the objects are highly interesting and suitable to be reused. And what is very important here is the vicinity to the city center, because it's actually, here is the city center, and the whole area is cut, and it's a 10-minute walk. It could be a 10-minute walk, now it's much more. So the rail tracks, as well as those existing objects, would form a good base to form a new public zone between two magnets. On the one hand, we have the Skopje Fair, which is here. And on the other hand, there is a very interesting ensemble of well-preserved industrial objects. which could be turned into a place of public interest. And again, in the combination with the already existing rail track, this could fulfill this role as an urban spine or backbone. Inserting new stops, by inserting these new stops here and formalizing informal ones, should set new impulses of public frequentation and enable the formation of a public square. The existing buildings should be reused as a marketplace, for example. And so besides the activating of the rail track, the public transport should also, in the form of a bus line, be prolonged and lead through the site, as well as we also propose the introduction of new bicycle lanes and, like already mentioned, the pedestrian area with options for accessibility and for delivery. And we are using the principle of a 5-minute city. And that is actually how this configuration of this backbone could look like. The main backbone with its repetitive high points and the vertebra, which enable a crosswise functional interconnection and curb the existing buildings. And the buildings that are oriented lengthwise form a frame for new public squares and the protection for small-scale sprawl, which is already existing there. So this is the combination and the master plan and the image. So we basically did the same or similar principles at the southern part, but we won't go into detail. We will just skip to the images. Yeah, this was also an industrial site, and of course we concentrated on the local circumstances, but with our tools from the northern part. Okay, this both of them. Okay, and the last image is a structural plan of the existing backbones. That more black one, maybe you see, in combination with the new implemented backbone and the rail track as public transport. And as you can see here, we were trying to give new directions for the further development and balance out those city parts. We believe that the application of structural measurements can really make a difference for the sustainable development and growth of a city, and could even assist in overcoming social and also ethnical inequalities.